I've never been a horror fan, just never really got into the genre. No horror movies and especially not horror games, but they always intrigued me. I remember being endlessly enthralled by creepypastas when I was in elementary school, only watching them on Halloweens because once a year was as much as I could take. Then later in middle school getting sucked into the whole Five Nights at Freddy's lore and everything MatPat and the whole community there were doing with those games. I was super interested in these things but never played the games, avoiding them because they were too scary. This all changed late February of last year when me and my friends were looking for a funny, carefree dating sim game to play all together, and someone recommended a free indie game on Steam called Doki Doki Literature Club. Now, I had heard of Doki Doki before, but I knew very little about it. My friends, on the other hand, knew very well what we were getting ourselves into and tried to warn me, but I was feeling uncharacteristically confident, so I installed the game and started screen sharing to my friends and we dove in. However, what started as just a game to mess around with my friends while playing turned into a terrifying, life-changing experience. Now, I'm well aware of how crazy that sounds, but hear me out. Let's take it from the very beginning and I'll explain how this seemingly innocent visual novel changed my life so dramatically. Doki Doki Literature Club is a psychological horror game released by Team Salvato in September of 2017. The head of the team, Dan Salvato, had made a name for himself as a professional Super Smash Bros. Player, helping to develop Project M and a new metagame for Link. He retired from playing Smash in 2015 and went silent for a while. Then he posted that Doki Doki Literature Club would release on April 1st, 2017, citing that the cute girls doing cute things trope was a double-edged sword. The game got pushed back and released on September 22nd, 2017, gaining mass popularity soon after. And I feel I should mention here that dating sims were by no means new at that point, the first of its kind being released nearly 40 years beforehand in 1984, and them coming out frequently ever since then. So by the time DDLC released, the format had been done to death. Here's basically how it goes in most dating sims. You play as a usually male protagonist, and for some reason every moderately attractive girl around you falls madly in love with you. This giving the player a choice between usually a few different girls to choose to romance, with typically very plain but different enough personality types. The game goes through usually a predetermined amount of time wherein you attempt to romance whatever girl you choose until you are either successful or fail. Over the years, people would get more creative with it, but that's the main idea. Doki Doki still has these characteristics, but it plays with you. Once you are enticed into playing the game through either wanting to make fun of it or just genuinely wanting to play a dating sim, you're greeted with this disclaimer, which should not be taken lightly in the slightest. Seriously, this game holds no punches when it comes to the topics mentioned here. This disclaimer also goes for this video, so please trust me when I say that there will be disturbing images. Once you click that, you understand, cheery music, cute characters, and a bright pink polka-dotted main menu screen greet you. You click New Game and meet your childhood friend and neighbor Sayori, who expresses concern about how much time your protagonist, also known as MC, spends inside watching anime, and begs him to join a club so he can get out more. He says he'll join the anime club, but Sayori has other plans. She wants to bring him to the literature club, and despite his protest, she's successful. In the club, you meet Monika, the super smart student archetype, Yuri, the super shy introverted archetype, and Natsuki, the tsundere archetype. Tsundere basically meaning someone who is very outwardly aggressive, but once you get to know them better, you can tell that they're actually very caring. Sounds pretty tropey so far, right? Well, that was intentional. In a playthrough of DDLC, Salvato explains how he used these tropes that have been baked into dating sims and anime to his advantage, going on to say that he made the first act of DDLC purposely full of tropes in order to lovingly make fun of the genre and to make players feel at home.
Like, I wrote the first chapter before anything else because I was like, okay, this is like, I need to kind of like lay the groundwork for like the most generic, tropey like dating sim that I can think of. DDLC is based on like Western anime culture, or at least like, how it's been the past couple years where like people kind of make fun of anime, but they love it at the same time. They just like love poking fun at themselves, and how it's become like very kind of meme-centric.
Before any of the horror game elements even started, the game was already playing with my social anxiety. For example, there's a scene where Natsuki and Yuri get into an argument about whose poems are better, and it gets pretty heated. Eventually, they try to get MC to decide who is right. This shot my anxiety through the ceiling because I hate conflicts and having to pick sides. This argument scene also shows off an important element of DDLC that I'll come back to later. As the game continues, whoever you've been writing your poems for in the poem word minigame, either Sayori, Natsuki, or Yuri, Monika being a noticeable exclusion, gets closer with the MC, hanging out with him during the club meetings and responding very well to his poems. Once the weekend rolls around, Monika reminds the club that they need to spend this weekend preparing for the school's festival. Over this weekend, the game takes a more serious turn. Sayori opens up to MC, telling him that she's had rather debilitating depression her whole life. This immediately strikes the player, as throughout the story you've been able to see her waking up late, being disorganized, and blaming it on just being tired, which are all very common behaviors for people with depression. Sayori goes on to say that she hates when people care about her, saying it feels like people are wasting their time on her. This being a huge difference from most visual novels where giving the girls attention will usually be good. In this case, it makes her extremely upset. The MC then says that he feels betrayed as her friend because she didn't tell him, and here's where the game started making me very emotional. I've always been incredibly empathetic to people, especially people with anxiety and depression, having dealt with it so harshly myself. Seeing how ignorantly MC handles his friend's confession gave me tons of anxiety, because it made me realize how bad people are with handling mental health issues even when they mean the absolute best. Salvato explained that he wrote MC to be realistic, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because while the things that MC does seems totally self-centered and ignorant, you can also see that above everything that he truly does care, and promises Sayori over and over again that he will do whatever he can. Only feeling quote-unquote betrayed because he cares so much and wants to know when she's in pain. He even hugs her and reminds her that the festival is coming up and it will be fun to hang out like they used to. This doesn't excuse his actions by any means, but you get my point. Since Sayori is working with Monika to do stuff for the festival, you can either choose to work with Yuri or Natsuki over the weekend. After the very serious, downcast conversation with Sayori, the game immediately reminds you that MC has a date coming up that afternoon. After you spend that afternoon with either one of the girls, Sayori comes over to see you but catches MC about to kiss whichever one you chose. This causes Sayori to spiral even harder, explaining that she's in love with you and that's why she's been getting worse the past few days. Explaining that while she's happy that you're making friends, she's worried that you'll forget about her and is getting progressively more jealous. The game gives you a choice to either confess back to her if you're on her route or just let her know that you'll always be friends. This choice doesn't end up mattering as Sayori is already too far gone. The morning of the festival, you get to school and Monika casually gives you a very distressing poem written by Sayori for the festival. MC immediately realizes that something is seriously wrong and starts sprinting to Sayori's house to check on her. When he gets to her bedroom door, there's no response to his knocking. After weighing his options, he then slowly opens the door and... The image of Sayori's lifeless body hanging assaults the player's eyes. What at one point was a cute, bubbly dating game has now become a horrific tragedy. While MC attempted to reckon with the death of his childhood friend, I sat in absolute silence in witness of one of my biggest fears. This is the absolute worst outcome from what I was talking about earlier. MC starts to blame himself for not being there for her effectively and for saying the wrong things. I love helping people emotionally, and being presented with what can potentially happen when you don't say the right things scared me to my core. While that thought is truly terrifying, some players might have noticed the error screen behind Sayori's corpse during her tragic end screen says see traceback.txt for details. This is when you start to get to just the tip of DDLC's true horror. If you navigate through your files and find the traceback file, you can find this in the midst of a bunch of technical jargon.
Oh, geez. I didn't break anything, did I? Hold on a second. I can probably fix this, I think. Actually, you know what? This would probably be a lot easier if I just deleted her. She's the one who's making this so difficult. Well, here goes nothing.
Once the game sends you back to the main menu screen, you can immediately see that everything is wrong now. What used to be Sayori is now a glitchy mess, and when you start a new game, she's been completely erased. MC talks about how he's never had any friends and has always walked to school alone. Monika gets you to join the club now, and Yuri is the vice president. The game is now very different. It's a glitchy mess with horrifying images popping up at random, even including a photo of Sayori hanging being interspersed with the posters in the back. To make things worse, all of the girls' issues, which were only hinted at in the previous act, are being brought out a lot more now. Yuri is now super possessive and her self-harming is significantly worse, and Natsuki is much more open about her disdain for Yuri as well as the abuse she's going through at home from her dad. At one point in the act, Natsuki realizes how much worse Yuri has gotten and tries to get help from Monika, who blows her off. This makes Natsuki extremely upset, forcing her to disguise a cry for help inside of a poem. Immediately after this, something manipulates Natsuki into taking what she said in the poem back, and telling MC to just talk to Monika. Which is weird because the entire game Monika hasn't even been an option to choose. This entire act I was on edge, barely being able to continue at some points. Luckily I still had my friends by my side, but at this point, after seeing all of this, I had had enough. Telling my friends that I needed a break from the game, because at this point it had started seeping into my dreams and just normal day thoughts. Which I'm well aware sounds insane, but it had been having a real effect on me. I mean, throughout the game, I'd really grown close with these characters, so seeing them go through so much pain really messed with me. The sad climax is when Yuri forces Monika and Natsuki out of the club room, desperately trying to spend time with MC, who has, by the way, just fully stopped reacting to things that have been happening. Yuri forces them out and then proceeds to confess her obsessive love for the MC, and the game gives you a choice between accepting her confession and rejecting it. Either way, what happens next is unavoidable. Since the game script is so badly broken at this point, instead of having a fun date with one of the girls, this time around you spend the weekend with Yuri's decaying body. During this horrifically uncomfortable scene, a file is added to your game, named Have a Nice Weekend, just as another way to mess with you. After the weekend ends, Natsuki walks in and proceeds to see Yuri's dead body and vomits before running out of the club room. Monika comes in afterwards and doesn't care at all, which has become standard for her at this point. She proceeds to open up a console and delete Yuri and Natsuki from existence. At this point, it's painfully obvious who's pulling the strings behind all of this. In the next act, it's just you and Monika. Monika reveals that she's deleted everything and everyone, and that she's responsible for what happened to Sayori, Yuri, and Natsuki. Not just them being deleted, but their unfortunate situations and deaths as well. Just so she could be with you instead. Explaining that she made Sayori more depressed so she wouldn't confess to you, which didn't work, so she just made her kill herself. This explaining the haunting final poem Sayori wrote, and she did the same with Yuri as well, but with her self-harming. Even though Monika explains that she caused all of these things, I still believe that this game has an incredible way to show mental health, because oftentimes it definitely can feel like someone else is controlling your emotions. She explains that she did all of these things so she could have a connection with a real person and not just video game characters. That's right, a real person. Meaning you. Not MC. You. She even says your name.
I'm talking to you, Maddie Patty. Or do you actually go by GT Live or something?
Is it reading our Steam account? Is that
Oh,
Are you kidding me? Because at no point in this game have we put GT Live. We did
Oh,
Maddie Patty.
no!
Is it reading our Steam account name? That's nuts.
At this point, it's just you and Monika. All of the other girls have been deleted along with the rest of the world. The only thing you can do is talk to her. Funnily enough, she actually has quite a lot to talk about, with over 50 different conversation topics that she can randomly say. You can either hear them all or progress the story by navigating to your game files and deleting Monika's character file. After this, she laments, saying that she's sorry about all the awful things she's done, and to prove this, she resets the game one last time. But once the bright, happy main menu screen comes up once again, you realize something. Monika isn't there. You start the game once again and Sayori is up and ready to greet you and talk about how she's been waking up early again. A clear sign that Monika's absence has made a very good change in this world. Sayori asks what club MC is going to join. MC almost shuts her down again, but realizes how that could hurt Sayori's feelings because she's started a club of her very own. MC decides that he'll surprise her and go to the literature club. Once he gets there, it's very clear to the player that everything is better now. Natsuki and Yuri talk about going to the store together to shop for books, and Sayori and MC get along greatly. That is until Sayori thanks you. You assume it's just for MC's attendance in the club, but she continues, saying that she already knew he was going to. She then thanks you for getting rid of Monika. At this point, the game throws the player back into the horror, as Sayori reveals that since she's president now, that she's all-knowing and knows everything that Monika did. Sayori then starts talking about how y'all will be together forever, until a message pops up from Monika, saying I won't let you hurt him, as she deletes Sayori and says that she was wrong and that there is no happiness here at all. She says goodbye to Sayori, goodbye to MC, and finally goodbye to the literature club. This ending scene shows the horrific loop this world is caught in, that no matter what happens, someone will always be president and therefore know about the game and go insane. Monika becomes aware of this cycle and therefore deletes the world. Then for the first time all game you hear a voice. It's Monika. She says that she has been practicing piano and wants to play and sing a song for you, which you'll hear later, but before that I just wanted to explain in a little bit more detail why I believe DDLC is so life-changing. In high school, around my freshman to sophomore year, I started falling into the mindset of needing to be popular, and this caused me to make a lot of dumb decisions, but it also taught me a lot about how teenagers act. Doki Doki Literature Club reinforced a lot of the things that I learned, especially when it comes to the friendship dynamics that young people can form, especially in high school. An example of this is during that playthrough of DDLC, Dan Salvato talks about how one of the reasons that MC has trouble being nice to Sayori is the way that their dynamic has grown makes it hard for him to be direct and emotional with her, even if he wants to be. He goes on to talk about how this especially happens in guy relationships. He furthers this topic of friendship dynamics by shifting over to Natsuki, explaining that she's probably not in a very good friend group given the fact that she's very defensive about her tastes, which is a characteristic often found in people who are used to being made fun of for their interests. Salvato continues explaining how this is a huge issue for young people, that people will get into friend groups and a group dynamic will form around making fun of each other, but if it goes too far there's no way out, because complaining and being emotionally vulnerable doesn't fit into the group dynamic, so oftentimes people will not be able to express those feelings. I fully agree with this. I see it happen all the time and it's incredibly easy for a group to fall into, and it can prove very damaging to the group. This is why we see Natsuki constantly being so up in arms about everything from her poems and manga to even her physical stature. She's just so used to being judged by everyone from her friends to even her dad that she's just used to being on the defensive side. And then, a huge part of her subsequent character development is her finding out how to be comfortable with the other members of the club. Yuri is similar but also very different. She has a lot of her own insecurities and is very careful in how she's perceived by others, but also sometimes will speak very highly of herself, or she'll at least try to in an effort to convince herself that these things about her are true, sometimes even going as far as to butt others down. She also tries to convince herself that she's better than the people that make fun of her, Natsuki included, saying that they're just immature, blind to the fact that she's doing the exact same thing. This is just another defense mechanism. It's a very easy one-stop shop to make herself feel better and make fun of the people who judge her. He explains that he used this very common situation between Natsuki and Yuri to show the importance of being at the very least respectful of other people's interests, even if you're not interested yourself. Explaining that it seemed important because along with everything else, he knew people would play DDLC just to make fun of it, so he wanted to show those people that you shouldn't judge people who genuinely enjoy these types of games. He then goes on to tell a story about how in middle school kids made fun of him for liking Nintendo, and how they said that he should only play Call of Duty or Madden instead. He hated how it made him feel, but he realized that he was being just as elitist about his taste as they were being, because he thought that he was better than them for liking Nintendo when they didn't. He explains that through Yuri and Natsuki's arguments that in these situations both people are usually too entitled, yet one will have the advantages for having the popular opinion.
That there's, like, you're most likely playing this game to make fun of it, or at least that was like kind of half the audience coming in, like, that was the satire of the game, to make fun of it. And here's this theme that's kind of like telling you that that the people who actually enjoy those sorts of dating sims, or spending time with fictional characters or watching anime or whatever, like, if they are enjoying that, then don't put them down because you think that it's because you have like a low opinion of it, like, let them be happy with it and respect them for it. And there must be something about it that they're getting that enjoyment out of, and that should be enough for you to give it some, at the very least, some respect, even if you have no interest in it yourself. So that's sort of like the meta theme that goes on there, and that kind of recurs throughout the game when it comes to like Natsuki and Yuri, as they, by the time we reach the epilogue, they sort of like decide to finally like respect each other's interests and, see what makes the other person so happy about it, even if it's like not their thing.
This incredibly intelligent character writing is one of the things that makes DDLC so life-changing to me. It ropes you in during the beginning, then proceeds to gut punch you by showing Sayori in so much pain, and then subverting your expectations by not allowing you to fix everything like in most visual novels. Then when she literally commits suicide, the game forces you to restart like nothing happened, and like this character that you've grown so close to in the past few hours never even existed. It then proceeds to essentially torture its other characters, even including Monika, ultimately resulting in an extremely depressing and hopeless ending, where the game is just deleted by Monika after she realizes how futile her world has become. This, first of all, is one of the reasons why I believe this game sticks with people. It wraps itself up in such a saddening way that none of the characters deserve, that it sticks in your brain. This game is the only game that I've ever played that can effectively throw the player for a loop and yet not lose its original charm. Even through the literal nightmares I had and how much anxiety I had while playing this game, I still find myself enthralled just by even Act 1, before the horror stuff even starts. Don't get me wrong, this game's horror is definitely incredible, but it's a testament to Salvato's abilities that through his efforts to write even the tropiest dating sim act, he still couldn't help to include little lessons about how to treat fellow people and how to build healthy friendships. It's just incredible, and it's why I fully, wholeheartedly believe that Doki Doki Literature Club is a life-changing experience.
Hi, it's me. So you know how I've been like...
Whoa, sorry Monika, 1 second. I'm afraid I've been dishonest. There is another ending to DDLC. One that is only achieved through giving equal time to every girl before Sayori dies. How is this done, you ask? Only through saving and loading. By breaking the usual dating sim stereotype of throwing every other girl away in order to be with one and hurting the others, in this one you make everyone happy. And as a reward, instead of a hopeless ending, you get a thank you from Sayori. Not for deleting Monika this time, but for genuinely loving everyone enough to spend hours upon hours of your time to love everyone equally. She goes on to say how much it means to her that you went out of your way to make sure everyone had someone to emotionally support them, and that they all truly love you before ending the game herself on a much more positive, conclusive note. This ending is what truly pushed me over the edge, pouring in what ended up being an entire Saturday of my life, and finally getting to see these characters that I'd grown so attached to get a happy ending because of my effort made me realize that helping people is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Thank you, Dan Salvato, and thank you, DDLC, for truly making me realize what has ended up being the most important revelation of my life.
Every day I imagine a future where I can be with you. In my hand is a pen that will write a poem of me and you. The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right the way into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices, what will it take just to find that special day? What will it take just to find that special day? Have I found everybody a fun assignment to do today? When you're here, everything that we do is fun for them anyway. When I can't even read my own feelings, what good are words when a smile says it all? And if this world won't write me an ending, what will it take just for me to have it all? Does my pen only write bitter words for those who are dear to me? Is it love if I take you, or is it love if I set you free? The ink flows down into a dark puddle. How can I write love into reality? If I can't hear the sound of your heartbeat, what do you call love in your reality? And in your reality, if I don't know how to love you, I'll leave you be.